I am Thara Brown. I'm a proud Koori woman, my grandmother's country from Bangarang country, Yorta Yorta Nation, on the Murray River. So yeah, thanks for everyone for joining. Loving seeing where all you mob are from in the chat and seeing some Arnies in the space too. So yeah, shout out to any First Nations mob in here and for you all for coming. I'm going to attempt to talk about a huge topic, which is cultural safety, and refer to our teaching Indigenous knowledges and perspectives in the curriculum guide and how that relates to setting the foundations to be able to safely deliver content such as the Australian wars. So yeah, acknowledging that there's some incredible teachers who have done an amazing work in this space already. But I think this is a big question, and we talk about this concept, cultural safety, we're a safe school, we're a safe workplace, but what does it actually mean? And did some research on this for myself, and not to bore you all reading off the screen, but I think this definition is really strong, so I am going to read it. An environment that is safe for people, where there is no assault, challenge or denial of their identity, of who they are and what they need. It is about shared respect, shared meaning, shared knowledge and experience of learning, living and working together with dignity and truly listening. So cultural safety isn't just about First Nations people. So what's really important to remember is that hopefully we join the education system because we're teachers and we care about the young people that we're working with, as well as the staff and the environment and the people that, you know, the school community interacts with around us. So we are all from cultures. We are all part of a culture in this country. So I think it's a good reminder to remember our responsibility to keep all people safe and included and empowered when we're having conversations. So that is a general cultural safety definition from Williams 2008 there. And then from a First Nations perspective, I always quote this, but Uncle Tom Kama said, the maturity of a nation's like reflected by the way their First Peoples are treated in any country. So when we talk about First Peoples first, there's a reason. We need to get this, you know, cultural safety and inclusive and respect piece right for our First Nations people, because then it will reflect every migrant that comes to this beautiful country. So from a First Nations perspective, when we're thinking about our young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, staff and community that we might have around our schools, the cultural safety is about building cultural connections and relationships based on a mutual trust and respect. Evidenced within Indigenous cultures and social systems and stories. So it's inclusive of languages, family kinships, protocols and obligations. And that's referenced there, and one of Cultures Life's co-chairs, Arnie Pat Dudgeon's involved with a bunch of scholars here in just creating this diagram to be able to speak to the spiritual, social and cultural connections. That means cultural safety for our young people, but hope that gives a little bit of a brief of what we're talking about, and the guide talks about creating safe learning environments. So next slide, please, Alex. Great. This is the guide. It's free to access. We're really, really proud of our collective work. All First Nations teachers have put their, you know, collective knowledge into this, and it's free to access on Cultures Life's website. If you haven't gone there already, please do so. But yeah, Teaching First Nations Knowledges and Perspectives guides there sort of speaks for itself, but I'm going to quickly sort of run through 7 steps that, yeah, a collective of us came to. If you'd go to the next slide, please, Alex. Something when we all sat around and talked about what can we gift and how can we strengthen the incredible work that you all do as teachers. And I say that because I was one and I know how hard you all work and still connected with schools today, is having a check-in for ourselves. So Annie Bin, as our incredible leader in her leadership as CEO, always talks about honouring and acknowledging your own ancestral story. So as a teacher, there can be this, you know, thing that I am the teacher, therefore I am the knowledge holder and I am going to share this with my students. But unfortunately, that's not the case in this country when we talk about being able to share First Nations knowledges and perspectives, not culture, which is a whole nother webinar series. We can't necessarily teach culture, even as an Aboriginal woman. I only can know my own and share my own, but we can teach perspectives and we can bring in more perspectives into the classroom. So the first step in this guide is really asking you to reflect on your own story and be vulnerable with your students. It's not necessarily your fault if you feel uncomfortable teaching these perspectives, because it's a systemic result. You've gone through an education system that's, very British focused in this country, or haven't had the societal interaction with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country, or wherever you are on that spectrum. It's just about checking in with you and being honest with that. So that's the first step. The second step, Ali, he's jumping me already. All right, I'll go quick. No, is effective preparation materials. So this is best practice. We learned this at uni, and you wouldn't put on a film clip that you haven't watched, or a YouTube clip or whatnot. But it's about, really, we encourage you to watch the whole series of the Australian Wars, even if Shell's going to touch on the detail of the resources in a moment. But even if you only show the clips that are on SBS Learn, which are created to, be able to have shorter length experience of what the series has to offer, we highly recommend you watch them. Really think about the questions you're asking your young people, and think about your own experiences. Always say we learn from the heart. So the more a teacher can really share their lived experience, I think the more our young people will connect. So that's my summary of that, and I won't read what's on the screen. So we'll go to the third one. Understanding protocol. So protocol exists as standards of behaviour, and there's cultural protocols, so customs, laws, codes of behaviour. There's a lot of different resources where this really becomes a bit more prominent when we're talking about the Australian Wars and sharing our shared history. Maybe it's more about understanding the places that you're talking about, connecting with, those local stories. And yeah, just understanding the young people in your classroom, really. So we put a content warning, for example, at the beginning of this webinar. There may be some young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in your classroom who will not feel comfortable, or it's their cultural protocol not to watch, see photos of images of people who are deceased. So that's a common protocol. So know your students, know who you're talking about, and refer to local protocol, really. Thank you. This is understanding First Nations connection to country and to kinships. This is a great diagram here. I won't spend too much time on it. It's in the guide, but it looks at all these beautiful connections that we have as Aboriginal people and non-Indigenous people. But this is about Aboriginal child's cultural connections as well. But yeah, a strong reminder when we're connecting with this series, as Rachel said, it's our shared history, and it could raise some emotions for non-Indigenous students in the classroom as well, if they're part of that shared history that they might not be proud of, or whatever comes up for them. So yeah, I encourage you to have a look at that and just understanding what connection to country and kinship means to us, especially when you're talking about displacement. We've seen it happen in the classroom when it's like, either there's an expectation for the young people to know their country when they've been displaced with it, or no details. So yeah, just get to know the people that you're dealing with in the classroom, really. Sorry, this is like the real one-on-one of this thing. I'm trying to go fast. But the First Nations community relationships, this is just basically really encouraging everybody to connect with local Aboriginal communities where your school is placed. So that means traditional owners, but also Aboriginal people who live on the country where your school is. So yeah, get to know what traditional land you're on, get to try to form relationships. The best ones, or maybe the most easiest to access, are if you do have any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids in your school, to be able to connect with their families and understand their histories and their stories. And you might have some that choose to share theirs in your classroom and give that personal connection, or there's local land councils and a list of Aboriginal orgs and things that you can connect with. So that's just about building strong relationships. Yeah. There's two more. Allowing safe expression for students and wellbeing. This is really important. Even as adults, when we're learning content that there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unlearn, relearn, a lot of emotions to go through. In our resources, we all have creative ways to allow students to express what is going on in their bodies and in their minds. So it could look like, encouraging, there's journaling, there's encouraging, being able to draw or scribble or create an environment where there's always some way that they're able to express themselves. And there's a bunch of incredible activities for that. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Yarning circles, just getting away from that, student-teacher separation in some of these conversations so people feel safe to be able to share and create intimate environments for that knowledge sharing. And the last one is language and terminologies. We always get asked about this. First Nations, Indigenous, Blackfella, Torres Strait Islander, Aboriginal. And I guess the encompassing answer is ask the First Nations people that are around you what they prefer. There's, out of Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, First Nations, Indigenous, there's no wrong necessarily. But yeah, just make sure the people around you are comfortable. The curriculum use First Nations a lot more now, so we've been using it across our education curriculum. But yeah,